In the vast wilderness of northern Maine, Sarah Matthews works against time and nature. 6 months pregnant and utterly alone, she hammers wooden planks into place, building the cabin that will shelter her and her unborn child from the approaching winter. Her swollen belly makes each movement difficult, yet determination drives her forward. Days blur together in an endless cycle of gathering firewood, securing food and construction. Her hands, once soft, now calloused and cracked, tell the story of her struggle. One morning, while collecting water from the stream, she spots a bearded stranger watching her from the treeline. He's injured, disoriented, clearly lost. For months she's seen no human face. Will this mysterious man be her salvation, or bring danger to everything she's fought to create? The worn leather journal sits open on Sarah's makeshift table, its pages filled with careful notations of her pregnancy progress, alongside sketches of the cabin she envisioned. Tonight, by firelight, she adds another entry. Sarah had arrived in this remote corner of Maine exactly 12 weeks ago, the small bump of her pregnancy barely visible then. The entry from that first day recorded her fear, her determination, and the weight of her decision. 3 months to build shelter before winter. 6 months until the baby comes. "I can do this," she had written, her normally neat handwriting shaky from exhaustion after the long journey. Her medical training proved invaluable from the start. As a labor and delivery nurse for 8 years, Sarah understood her pregnancy's progression with clinical precision, noting each development with professional detachment in the journal's left pages. The right pages held her emotions, raw, unfiltered fears, and hopes for her child. The temporary shelter came first, a simple lean-to constructed against a natural rock formation that provided some protection from the elements. Each morning she'd wake at dawn, one hand instinctively cradling her growing belly, the other reaching for the journal to record another day of survival. Selecting the cabin site had taken a full week of careful consideration. She needed proximity to clean water, natural shelter from prevailing winds, defensible sightlines, and exposure to sunlight. When she found the small clearing beside the stream, with dense forest on 3 sides and a gentle slope rising behind it, she recognized it immediately. This would be home. The foundation stones were the hardest, each one carried from the streambed, growing heavier as her pregnancy advanced. She developed a system using leverage rather than strength, adapting as her center of gravity shifted with her growing child. In those early weeks, the solitude felt like both punishment and sanctuary. The forest sounds became her companions, chickadees in the morning, owls at dusk, the constant murmur of the stream. Sometimes she caught herself speaking aloud, explaining her construction decisions to her unborn child, as if teaching valuable lessons for the future. "Today we're setting corner posts," she remembers telling her belly one bright June morning. "Everything depends on getting these right." A solid foundation means the first flutter of movement inside her had stopped her mid-sentence. She'd dropped her tools and sat heavily on a nearby stump, hands pressed against the spot where she'd felt life stirring. The journal entry from that day was tear-stained, the first genuine joy she'd allowed herself to feel since fleeing. As summer progressed, so did the cabin walls. Each log notched and fitted according to techniques learned from library books, studied months in advance. Her medical knowledge helped her recognize her physical limits, forcing rest when necessary despite her urgency to complete the shelter. The forest provided what she needed: berries, nuts, occasionally fish from the stream, mushrooms she could confidently identify. Her body strengthened even as it transformed, arms developing muscle definition she'd never had before, hands growing calloused and capable. At night, she'd sit by her small fire, reading pregnancy books by firelight, one hand resting on her journal. The isolation sometimes crushed down on her in these quiet moments, doubt creeping in like the evening chill. Had she made an impossible choice? Could one woman, pregnant and alone, truly create safety in this wilderness? But each morning brought renewed purpose. The cabin gradually took shape, 4 walls now, partial roof, a stone hearth on the north wall, simple furnishings crafted from smaller logs and branches, a bed frame first, prioritizing rest for her changing body. The day she felt the baby kick for the first time while fitting logs for the cabin's eastern wall remains the brightest entry in her journal. That night, she'd written, "We built something together today, little one. You and I. The first of many things we'll create in this life we're making." The faded photograph lies face down beside Sarah's sleeping mat. She never displays it openly, but can't bring herself to destroy it either. In weaker moments, she turns it over, eyes drawn to the torn edge where his face once was. The cabin feels colder on these nights. Autumn paints the Maine wilderness in fiery hues, a stark contrast to the deepening blue of the stream, where Sarah kneels each morning. Her reflection has changed dramatically over 3 months. Face leaner, arms stronger, eyes carrying a wilderness wisdom previously absent. Her 6-month pregnant belly now protrudes prominently, altering her stance and movements. She's mastered the stream's rhythms, knowing precisely which pools harbor trout and when. Her makeshift fishing spear, crafted from a straight sapling and painstakingly sharpened stone, rarely misses now. Gone is the city woman who once squeamished at gutting fish. Necessity has transformed her. "We eat what we catch, little one," she murmurs to her belly, as practiced hands clean the morning's catch. That's the rule out. The baby responds with a flutter of movement that still makes her pause and smile. The cabin walls stand complete now, chinked with a mixture of moss and clay to keep out draft. The roof, her greatest challenge, is 3/4 finished, complex angles designed to shed snow and rain away from the entrance. She's learned through painful trial and error, the partial collapse of the first attempt teaching more than any book. Sarah works with the rhythm of her pregnancy now, rather than fighting against it. Morning sickness passed months ago, replaced by a steady energy that peaks midday. She schedules heavy work for these hours, reserving mornings and evenings for foraging, food preparation, and crafting essential items. The first major storm caught her with only half the roof complete. Rain had poured through gaps, creating rivers across her dirt floor, soaking her few possessions. She'd huddled in the driest corner, wrapped in her tarp, crying for the first and only time since arriving. By morning, determination replaced despair. She'd rebuilt stronger, smarter. Her pregnancy has become both vulnerability and strength. The growing child inside her provides motivation when exhaustion threatens to overwhelm. Yet she tracks its development with medical precision, preparing for the ultimate challenge ahead. Giving birth alone in the wilderness. The birth kit grows piece by piece, clean cloths boiled and dried in the sun, strings sterilized over flame for the umbilical cord. A small knife kept razor sharp, yarrow and shepherd's purse gathered and dried for bleeding. Pain management remains her greatest concern, her knowledge of hospital births offering little help for what lies ahead. Each morning follows the same ritual. She wakes before dawn, one hand resting on her belly, eyes scanning the cabin's shadowy interior. "Good morning in there," she whispers. "Today we'll put another row of shingles on the roof. By winter, you'll have a proper home." These quiet conversations sustain her through the crushing solitude. The photograph remains her only tether to the past, a reminder of why she fled and what she escaped. Sometimes, in twilight hours when the boundary between worlds feels thinnest, Sarah holds it toward the dying light, studying the half that remains. Her own face, younger and naive, smiling with no knowledge of what lay ahead. She never looks at the torn edge for long. Nature has become her closest companion, its cycles and patterns, a comfort in their reliability. She recognizes individual birds now, the crooked-beaked chickadee that visits at breakfast, the barred owl that hunts near her clearing. The wilderness, initially so threatening, now feels like an ally in her isolation. As autumn deepens, she races against the approaching winter. The first frost arrived yesterday, sparkling across the clearing like scattered diamonds. Sarah had stood in the doorway of her nearly completed cabin, one hand supporting her lower back, the other protectively across her swollen abdomen. "We're going to make it," she promised her unborn child as the rising sun transformed frost to dew. For the first time, she truly believed it herself. The half-finished baby cradle sits in the corner of Sarah's cabin, its curved edges sanded smooth by patient hands. She's carved delicate woodland creatures along its sides, a family of deer, a watchful fox, a soaring owl. Each evening she adds a few more details, fingers working the soft pine as she hums quiet lullabies to her unborn child. The cabin has transformed from skeletal framework to solid shelter over these autumn months. Standing in its center, Sarah runs her hand along a finished wall, pride warming her chest. The structure isn't large, 12 feet square, but every inch serves a purpose. The stone hearth, her greatest achievement, draws perfectly, sending smoke up through the chimney without filling the single room. Windows were a late addition, two small openings covered with oiled deerskin that allow diffused light while keeping out the increasing cold. She positions her bed to catch morning sun, the cradle placed where she can reach it easily during night feedings in the months ahead. Her expanded belly now makes construction work increasingly difficult. 7 months pregnant, Sarah moves with deliberate care, aware that a fall or injury could prove catastrophic. The roof, thankfully complete, has already weathered 3 substantial rainstorms without a single leak. "We did good work," she tells her belly, receiving a solid kick in response that makes her laugh. These conversations have become essential to her sanity, the one-sided dialogue filling the silence that sometimes threatens to consume her. This morning brought the first true frost, not the gentle dusting of previous weeks, but a hard, crystalline coating that crunched underfoot and remained in shaded areas until midday. Winter approaches faster than anticipated. The food cache grows daily, smoked fish hanging from rafters, baskets of nuts and dried berries, root vegetables buried in sand to preserve them. Sarah calculates and recalculates her supplies obsessively, adding extra whenever possible. Her most precious resource, salt, carried in limited supply from civilization, she uses with extreme parsimony. Her body has adapted remarkably to wilderness living. Muscles defined in arms that once struggled to open tight jars, hands calloused and capable, legs strong from miles of daily walking. Only her pregnant belly seems incongruous with her newly hardened physique. The birthing preparations occupy increasing mental space as her due date approaches. She's constructed a simple support frame beside her bed, ropes hanging from ceiling beams that she can grip during labor. Clean cloths, sterilized and stored in a covered basket. A special tea of raspberry leaf harvested before the frost, prepared and waiting to strengthen contractions when the time comes. Sarah's medical knowledge provides comfort, but also awareness of all that could go wrong. Breech presentation, hemorrhage, cord complication. Each possibility has been considered, preparations made where possible, acceptance cultivated where not. Morning brings a new development, movement lower in her pelvis, the baby dropping into position. "Getting ready, aren't you?" she murmurs, adjusting her movements to accommodate the change. 7 weeks remain until her estimated due date, though first babies often arrive late. Still, she accelerates her preparations. The first wolves appeared yesterday, at forest edge, 3 gray shadows watching with yellow eyes. Not threatening, merely curious, but their presence signals changing seasons. Larger predators moving down from higher elevations, seeking winter territories. Sarah adds extra reinforcement to her door that evening. From her doorway at dusk, Sarah watches thin smoke curl from her chimney into darkening sky. The scene appears almost ordinary, a woodland cabin prepared for winter, smoke suggesting comfort within. Nothing reveals the extraordinary circumstances of its creation or its solitary pregnant inhabitant. Inside, she returns to the cradle, adding delicate whiskers to the carved fox. Her other hand rests on her belly, feeling the strong movements that have become so familiar. Almost ready, she tells the cradle. Almost ready for you. The strange sound comes just before full darkness. Not animal, not wind. Something else. Sarah freezes, knife pausing mid-carve. There it comes again. A distinctly human sound, a branch breaking beneath a heavy, deliberate step. For months she has been completely alone. The broken compass lies heavy in Sarah's palm, its needle stubbornly fixed, pointing south regardless of how she turns it. She found it in the stranger's pocket while checking for identification. The glass cracked across its face, rendered useless for navigation. Perhaps that explains his presence in these remote woods, a lost traveler with a broken guide. Dawn breaks cold and clear as Sarah watches the unconscious man from the corner of her cabin. She dragged him inside after his collapse, medical instincts overriding caution, though not completely. His wrists are bound with cordage to the sturdy leg of her table. The hunting knife that normally stays sheathed at her hip now rests within easy reach beside her. His arrival yesterday had sent her into a defensive crouch, pregnancy momentarily forgotten as adrenaline flooded her system. For months, her greatest fear had been discovery. Now, a bearded stranger stood swaying at the edge of her clearing, watching her with fever-bright eyes before crumpling to the ground like a puppet with cut strings. Approaching his prone form had required tremendous courage, each step measured and careful. Up close, his condition became obvious. Torn clothing, multiple lacerations, skin hot with infection. Days without proper food or shelter had taken their toll. His unconscious state offered temporary safety, but also a decision: help him or protect herself. In the end, her medical training won out. "I took an oath," she murmurs to her unborn child, one hand resting protectively over her belly. "First, do no harm." Moving him had been the greatest challenge. At 7 months pregnant, her center of gravity already compromised, Sarah had fashioned a crude drag sled from branches and her tarp. Each inch toward the cabin required extraordinary effort, sweat soaking through the clothes. Despite the autumn chill, inside she'd cleared a space away from her bed, creating a boundary of psychological comfort, if not actual safety. Basic assessment revealed dehydration, issues from untreated wounds, and probable malnourishment. No identification, just the broken compass and a folding knife. Nothing to indicate whether he represented danger or simply misfortune. "Who are you?" she asks the unconscious figure, not expecting an answer. His face, beneath the unkempt beard, appears young, mid-30s perhaps. His hands tell a different story, calloused like hers, marked with old scars. Speaking of physical work, the fever concerns her most. Without antibiotics, infection could prove fatal. She uses what she has: yarrow poultice for the worst wounds, willow bark teaspooned carefully between cracked lips, cool compresses on his forehead. Throughout the night she alternates between treating his fever and watching for signs of consciousness. Morning brings subtle improvement, his breathing steadier, skin less flushed. Sarah changes bandages, noting with clinical detachment that several wounds show early healing. The fever persists but has lessened. He'll likely wake soon, bringing the moment she both anticipates and dreads: first contact. The compass draws her attention again. Why carry a broken instrument? Was he already lost when it failed, or did its failure cause his predicament? The needle's stubborn southward orientation feels symbolic somehow, pointing away from the direction she'd fled months earlier. He stirs slightly, mumbling incoherent words. Sarah tenses, hand moving instinctively toward her knife. Not fully conscious yet, but the threshold approaches. She mentally rehearses what to say, how to establish boundaries, how to determine if he represents threat or opportunity. Neither option feels safe. "I need to know if you're dangerous," she tells his unconscious form, voice steady despite her racing heart. "I've worked too hard to lose everything now." Her unborn child kicks vigorously, as if responding to her elevated stress. Sarah exhales slowly, consciously relaxing her shoulders, knowing that her tension transfers directly to the baby. "It's okay," she whispers. "We're going to be careful." The small cabin, her sanctuary for months, suddenly feels claustrophobic with another person in it. Sarah moves to the doorway, needing air, keeping the stranger in peripheral vision. Outside, morning fog clings to treetops, the familiar landscape temporarily transformed into something ethereal and strange. Like her life has become with the arrival of this unknown man. The torn map crinkles between Sarah's fingers, its edges blackened as though rescued from fire. She discovered it in the inner pocket of the stranger's jacket, half of what once might have been a topographical guide to these mountains. The remaining portion shows no roads, no trails, only contour lines and a few unmarked X's scattered across the wilderness. "Michael," the man mumbles, eyes fluttering open for the third time today, consciousness returning in longer stretches. "My name is Michael." His voice rasps from dehydration despite Sarah's efforts to keep him hydrated. "I'm Sarah," she replies, maintaining a careful distance, knife visible at her hip. "You collapsed outside my cabin yesterday. You're running a fever from infected wound." Confusion clouds his gaze as he takes in his surroundings, the simple cabin, the pregnant woman keeping her distance, his own bandaged arms. "Where?" The question trails off as another wave of delirium sweeps over him. "Northern Maine. Miles from anywhere." She doesn't specify further, protective of precise location details. "What happened to you?" Michael struggles to focus, brow furrowed with effort. "Was hiking, got lost when..." His eyes drift to the broken compass beside her. Compass failed, then the storm came. The explanation seems plausible. Early autumn storms in these mountains can be treacherous, especially for unprepared hikers. Still, Sarah notes inconsistencies. His clothing too rugged for recreational hiking. Multiple wounds suggesting more than a simple fall. "You need rest and antibiotics I don't have," she says plainly. "Once the fever breaks, if you can walk, there's a ranger station about 2 days south." Another omission. It's actually east, but redirecting him away from her sanctuary feels prudent. His eyes, surprisingly clear for a moment, study her pregnant form. "You're alone out here?" Disbelief colors the question. Sarah stiffens. "By choice, and I've managed fine." Her hand drifts to her knife, a gesture not lost on Michael despite his weakened state. "Not a threat," he mumbles, raising bound hands slightly. "Just surprised." The boundaries established early remain firm, Michael confined to his corner, Sarah maintaining vigilant distance. She changes his bandages with clinical efficiency, applies fresh poultices, ensures hydration, but limits conversation, each interaction carefully balanced between humanitarian care and self-protection. That night, his fever spikes dangerous. Sarah sits beside him, changing cool compresses hourly, spooning willow bark tea between cracked lips. His delirium brings fragments of story, disconnected phrases about getting away and finding somewhere they won't look. Each mysterious utterance heightens her suspicion, yet his vulnerable state evokes reluctant compassion. "Please," he begs during one fevered moment, gripping her wrist with surprising strength, "don't let them find me." "Who?" Sarah asks, pulse quickening. "Who's looking for you?" But coherence slips away, leaving her question unanswered as he sinks back into restless unconsciousness. Dawn brings marginal improvement and brief lucidity. Sarah, exhausted from her night's vigil, rebinds his wounds while explaining her terms. "You can stay until you're strong enough to travel. 3 days, maybe 4. She meets his gaze directly. "But there are rules. You don't leave this corner without permission. You make no decisions about my supplies. You tell me the truth about why you're really here." Michael nods weakly. Fair terms. His eyes, clearer now, scan the cabin, the nearly finished cradle, the carefully organized supplies, the sturdy construction. "You built all this yourself." Pride briefly overcomes caution. Every bit of it. Impressed. The simple acknowledgement, free from condescension, catches her off guard. When are you due? December. Sarah retreats emotionally, uncomfortable with his interest in her pregnancy. Why were you in these woods? The truth this time. Michael's gaze shifts to the torn map beside her. Running, not toward anything. Just away. Fatigue slurs his words as fever reclaims ground. Needed somewhere no one would find me. The parallel to her own circumstances sends an uncomfortable chill through Sarah. Before she can press further, he slips back into uneasy sleep, leaving her with more questions than answers. Outside, the morning light reveals the season's first dusty snowflakes drifting through the clearing. The hand-carved wooden fox sits on the table between them, its delicate features capturing the alert intelligence of the animal with remarkable precision. Michael had worked on it secretly during his recovery, using scraps from her woodpile and a small knife she'd reluctantly loaned him on the 5th day, when his fever finally broke completely. It's for the baby's cradle, he explains, pushing it toward her. To go with the others you carved. Sarah examines the fox, running her fingertip along its pointed ears and bushy tail. The craftsmanship surpasses her own carvings, this from a man who claimed no particular skill with woodworking. You've done this before, she observes, neither accepting nor rejecting the gift. Michael shrugs, wincing slightly, as the movement pulls at healing wounds. My father was a carpenter. I picked up a few things. His first genuine revelation about his past, offered casually over their morning meal of acorn porridge. A week has passed since his collapse at the edge of her clearing. Each day brings visible improvement, strength returning, mental clarity sharpening. The ropes binding him were removed 3 days ago, though Sarah still keeps her knife close and sleeps lightly. The roof needs reinforcement before the heavy snow comes, she says, changing the subject. I can manage it, but it would go faster with help. The closest she's come to asking for assistance. Show me what you need, Michael replies simply, accepting the unspoken truth. Their first shared project reveals his practical knowledge. Examining her roof construction, he suggests additional cross braces to support the weight of accumulated snow. Together they split pine logs into appropriate dimensions, Michael demonstrating a technique that uses the wood's natural grain to create cleaner breaks. Where did you learn this? Sarah asks, successfully splitting a log using his method. Was a carpenter myself. Before, he hesitates. Before everything changed. The vague reference to his past hangs between them, but Sarah doesn't press. Her own secrets remain closely guarded, their mutual reticence forming the foundation of their cautious cooperation. Working together transforms the cabin more rapidly than Sarah could have managed alone. Michael's strength complements her detailed planning, his carpentry skills elevating her practical designs. The roof reinforcement leads to improved window coverings, a sturdier door with a proper latch. Essential preparations for the approaching winter. The baby will be warm, Michael observes as they secure the final window covering, a frame with oiled hide stretched taut across it, allowing diffused light while blocking drafts. Sarah's hand moves instinctively to her swollen belly. That's the priority. Their evening routine develops gradually, Sarah preparing simple meals from her carefully rationed stores, Michael contributing knowledge of edible plants she had overlooked. Their conversations remain practical, focused on immediate tasks and needs, though occasional personal details slip through. You know a lot about childbirth, Michael comments one evening, observing her methodical preparation of birthing supplies. I was a labor and delivery nurse. The admission comes easier than expected. 8 years experience before. She mirrors his earlier reticence, before everything changed. Michael nods, accepting the boundary of her disclosure. That explains how you've managed so well out here. Medical training would be invaluable. It helped, she acknowledges. But most of this I learned by doing. That night, Sarah dreams of her former life, for the first time in months. Hospital corridors, the weight of responsibility, faces of mothers and newborns she helped bring together. She wakes disoriented, momentarily forgetting her wilderness home and the stranger sleeping across the room. Michael respects her space scrupulously, maintaining the invisible boundaries she's established within the small cabin. He sleeps by the door, as far from her bed as the confined space allows, and announces his movements clearly, minimizing surprising encounters in their shared domain. Despite these precautions, proximity breeds familiarity. Sarah notices the precise way he folds the blanket she provided, the careful organization of the few tools she permits him to use, his habit of humming tunelessly while working. Small humanizing details that complicate her determination to view him as temporary and potentially threatening. "Why are you really here?" she asks directly, one morning, the question that has hovered unspoken since his arrival. Michael's hands pause mid-task, his expression guarded. "Same reason as you, I suspect," he answers finally. "Looking for a place where no one will find me." The unexpected honesty creates a moment of genuine connection, quickly masked as both return to their work on the cabin's final preparations for winter. The handmade herbal medicine kit sits open between them, its contents meticulously organized in small bark containers. Dried yarrow for bleeding, willow bark for pain and fever, pine resin for sealing wounds, carefully labeled packages of other medicinal plants. Sarah adds the final element, a salve of comfrey and beeswax for Michael's healing wounds. "This should help with the pain," she explains, demonstrating how to apply it. "The deeper cuts will still hurt when the temperature drops, but this will take the edge off." Michael examines the kit with evident appreciation. "You could open an apothecary out here," he comments, wincing slightly, as he applies the salve to a particularly deep laceration on his forearm. "Necessity," Sarah replies with a shrug, though pride colors her voice. "I couldn't exactly bring a pharmacy with me. The cabin feels different today, fully enclosed, properly insulated, a true shelter against the elements." Their shared labor of the past 2 weeks has transformed it from functional to genuinely comfortable. The stone hearth draws perfectly, radiating steady warmth throughout the single room. The floor, now covered with woven pine boughs, provides insulation against the cold ground. Even the furnishings have improved. A proper table, 2 sturdy chairs, shelving along one wall. Outside, the first substantial snowfall blankets the clearing, 6 inches of crystalline white, transforming the landscape overnight. They stand in the doorway together, unconsciously mirroring each other's posture of quiet contemplation. "We're trapped together now," Sarah observes, her tone carefully neutral, "at least until a thaw." Michael nods, understanding the unspoken question about their arrangement. "I'll continue earning my keep," he assures her, "and respect your boundaries." Their cohabitation has developed an unexpected rhythm. Michael rises first, rekindling the fire before Sarah wakes. She prepares their morning meal while he clears snow from the path to the stream, now their lifeline for water. Daytime hours fill with continuous tasks, preserving food, maintaining the cabin, preparing for the baby's arrival. "The cradle needs finishing," Michael mentions as they work through the afternoon. Sarah sorting dried herbs while he repairs a split seam in the leather window covering. "Winter might keep us inside, but that baby won't wait for spring." The casual "us" doesn't escape Sarah's notice, though she lets it pass without comment. His investment in preparing for her child's arrival has grown steadily, his carpenter's hands bringing the half-finished cradle closer to completion each evening. "I've been thinking about the birthing arrangements," Sarah says later, medical pragmatism overcoming personal reticence. "If complications arise, I may need assistance." The acknowledgement of potential dependency costs her visibly, shoulders tense as she continues. "I should show you what to do, just in case." Michael sets aside his work, giving her his full attention. "I'm willing to learn whatever you need to teach me." Their lessons begin that evening, Sarah explaining birthing basics, potential complications, warning signs. Michael listens with serious concentration, asking relevant questions that suggest some prior knowledge. "You seem familiar with this," Sarah observes. Curiosity, overcoming caution. A shadow crosses his face. "My sister had 2 difficult births. I helped with the second one when no one else was around." Another piece of his past revealed, each disclosure building a more complete picture. Night brings a fierce storm, wind howling around the cabin corners, testing their construction. They sit before the fire, separate yet together, listening to winter's fury while safe within walls they've strengthened together. I left behind a violent husband, Sarah says suddenly, the howling wind perhaps making confession easier. He didn't know about the pregnancy. I left the night I confirmed it. Michael absorbs this without visible reaction. Is he looking for you? He has resources, connections. Her hand moves protectively to her belly. I couldn't risk staying. The silence stretches between them, filled with unspoken understanding. Finally Michael speaks, eyes fixed on the flames. We all have something we're running from. What's yours? Sarah asks. The question direct, but her tone gentle. Michael's gaze remains on the fire. A mistake I can't undo. People who won't forgive. He doesn't elaborate further, and Sarah doesn't. Their first real argument comes the following day. A disagreement about using the last of the salt for preservation versus saving it for the birth. Voices rise, positions harden, the confined space amplifying tension. You don't get the final say just because you found me half dead. Michael snaps, frustration breaking through his usual calm. And you don't get equal vote just because you've been helpful, Sarah counters, protective instincts flaring. The dispute resolves through compromise, splitting the salt for both purposes, but leaves a residual awareness of their precarious alliance. That night, they work silently on opposite sides of the cabin, the easy rhythm temporarily disrupted. The metal locket gleams in the firelight, its silver surface scratched, but still reflective. Sarah holds it carefully, conscious of invading Michael's privacy, yet unable to ignore what she found while organizing their dwindling medical supplies. The locket had fallen from his jacket pocket, small, oval, clearly cherished, judging by the worn spot where a thumb had repeatedly rubbed its surface. Sarah doesn't open it. Some boundaries remain sacred even in their forced intimacy, but its presence raises new questions about the man who now shares her wilderness refuge. December arrives with brutal cold, temperatures plummeting far below freezing. The world outside their cabin door transforms into a crystalline landscape, breathtakingly beautiful and deadly in its winter stillness. Inside, their small domain grows increasingly compact, as drying herbs, stored firewood, and completed baby preparations claim more space. We could extend the sleeping platform, Michael suggests one evening, studying the cabin's layout with a carpenter's eye. Create a separate area for the baby that's still within reach. Sarah considers the proposal, one hand absently rubbing her heavily pregnant belly. The baby could arrive any day now, her due date calculations suggesting mid-December. How long would it take? 2 days, maybe 3. He sketches the design in wood smoke on the hearthstones. We have enough split logs, and I can repurpose some of the shelving. Their cooperation has evolved beyond mere survival into something approaching partnership, though Sarah maintains certain barriers. She never speaks of her life before the wilderness, never reveals the location of the hidden backpack containing her emergency supplies and the last remnants of her former identity. Go ahead with the platform, she decides, practical need overriding lingering caution. But I need to ask you something first. Michael looks up from his sketch, wariness crossing his features. Sarah places the locket on the table between them. This fell from your pocket. I didn't open it, but I need to know. Are you being honest about who you are? The silence stretches, broken only by the popping of pine knots in the fire. Michael finally reaches for the locket, thumb automatically finding the worn spot on its surface. I haven't lied, he says carefully, but I haven't told you everything. We're stuck here together for the winter, Sarah counters. I'm about to have a baby. I need to know if I can truly trust you. Michael's fingers close around the locket. I was a carpenter. Like I said, I had a normal life in Boston. Apartment, steady work, even a fiancé. His voice catches slightly. Then I witnessed something I shouldn't have. powerful people doing illegal things. I reported it, testified. He opens his hand, revealing the locket once more. They found ways to discredit me, ruin my reputation, destroy my business. But that wasn't enough. When accidents started happening around me, I realized they wouldn't stop until I was silenced permanently. Sarah absorbs this, measuring it against her own observations of his character over their weeks together. So you ran, like me. Michael nods. Different reasons. Same outcome. He hesitates, then opens the locket, revealing a small photo of a smiling woman. Emily. She ended our engagement when things got dangerous. Said she couldn't live looking over her shoulder. The revelation shifts something between them. Mutual fugitives, each running from threats beyond the wilderness. Sarah finds herself sharing more than intended. My husband is a state prosecutor. She admits, respected, connected, and privately violent. When I got pregnant, I knew I couldn't raise a child in that environment, but he'd never let me leave. Her hand protectively cradles her belly. He has resources to find me if he wants to. That's why I came so far off the grid. Michael absorbs this without judgment. You chose the right place. I've been lost since before my compass broke. Their shared disclosures create a new foundation, not complete trust, but deeper understanding. That night, they sit closer than usual by the fire. The psychological distance between them diminished by revealed vulnerabilities. The sleeping platform takes shape over the next 3 days. Michael's carpentry skills transforming rough logs into a surprisingly elegant extension of Sarah's bed, with a sunken area beside it perfectly sized for the completed cradle. The efficient use of their limited space impresses Sarah, who finds herself genuinely thanking him for the first time. It's perfect for the baby, she acknowledges, running her hand along the smooth sanded edge. Thank you. Michael's smile, rare and unpracticed, transforms his weather-lined face. Just doing my part. The moment of connection breaks as Sarah gasps suddenly, hands flying to her abdomen. What is it? Michael asks, alarm sharpening his voice. Sarah exhales slowly, face concentrated. Just practice contractions. Braxton Hicks. The real thing isn't far off, though. That night brings their first genuine laughter together, sparked by Michael's comical demonstration of his plan to collect pine boughs in the deep snow, pantomiming exaggerated floundering and falls. Sarah's laughter, rusty from disuse, fills the cabin, her guard momentarily lowered. In this unguarded moment, they are simply two humans sharing warmth against the vast winter wilderness. The improvised calendar occupies the wall beside the hearth, a careful grid of marks scratched into a flat piece of pine. Sarah adds another tally mark with the tip of her knife. December 12th by her knuckles, though the isolation makes exact dates difficult to track. She's marked her due date with a small star, now just days away. 21 days until the winter solstice, Michael observes, watching her daily ritual from where he kneels by the hearth, feeding carefully split logs into the fire. Days start getting longer. After that, the cabin has become a well-organized haven against the deepening winter outside. Their shared space, initially awkward, now functions with the efficiency of practiced routine. Michael rises first, tending the fire that can never be allowed to die during these coldest weeks. Sarah manages their food stores with careful precision, each meal balanced between immediate needs and long-term sustainability. We should check the snare line this morning, Sarah says, wincing slightly as she straightens. Her pregnancy has reached the uncomfortable final stage, the baby positioned low, her movements increasingly labored. If nothing's there, we'll need to consider alternative protein. Michael nods, already reaching for his outer layers, pants reinforced with rabbit fur at the knees and seat, the heavy jacket they've patched together, mittens lined with pine marten fur from a lucky trap. I'll go. You should rest. Sarah bristles at the suggestion, maternal protectiveness extending to the responsibilities she's carried alone for so long. I'm pregnant, not helpless. We go together. Like always, Their partnership in hunting developed naturally after the first heavy snowfall. Michael learned quickly under Sarah's tutelage how to set snares in rabbit runs, identify promising fishing holes through ice, track the movement patterns of the few winter birds. His contribution of identifying edible winter fungi and knowing how to tap birch trees for additional sustenance proved invaluable as their supplies dwindled. Outside, the winter forest stands silent and pristine, sunlight refracting through ice crystals to create a sparkling wonderland belying the deadly cold. They move together with practiced efficiency, checking each trap in turn, Michael breaking trail through knee-deep snow, Sarah following in his footsteps to conserve energy. The third snare yields success, a snowshoe hare, its winter white coat now a liability against the snare's thin cord. Michael dispatches it quickly, respectfully, the way Sarah taught him. "Thank you," he murmurs to the animal, the ritual acknowledgement they both observe with each life taken for their survival. Returning to the cabin, they work in comfortable silence, Sarah skinning the hare with practiced movements, Michael preparing the fire for cooking. The easy rhythm of their cooperation feels natural now, so different from the tense wariness of early weeks. "You were calling out in your sleep again," Sarah mentions casually, hands busy with the meat. "The same name, Alvarez." Michael's movements falter momentarily. "Was I? Third time this week." She doesn't push, having learned that direct questions about his past often trigger withdrawal. Instead, she waits, allowing space for voluntary disclosure. Michael focuses on adjusting the cooking spit, back turned to her. "Alvarez was the man I testified against, head of construction for a major development company in Boston. They were cutting corners, using substandard materials. A section of ceiling collapsed in an apartment building they renovated. 2 people died, including a 4-year-old girl. The words come easier now, their shared isolation and interdependence having worn smooth some of the sharp edges of distrust. I was subcontracted for the cabinetry, saw the falsified inspection documents. When I reported it, Alvarez's people came after me, made it look like I was the one who'd falsified records." Sarah absorbs this, fitting it with other fragments he's shared over weeks of proximity. "That's why you ran." Michael nods. "When my brake lines were cut, I stopped believing the legal system would protect me." The revelation settles between them, another layer of understanding in their evolving relationship. Sarah finds herself sharing in return, an unconscious balance maintained. "I used to love winter," she offers, hands still working methodically. "David, my husband, and I went skiing in Vermont every February, before I understood what he was." Michael turns toward her, hearing the opening in her voice. "When did you know?" "It built gradually. Criticism became control. Control became isolation. When I finally fought back verbally, she swallows. The first time he hit me, he brought flowers the next day, said it would never happen again. But it did." Michael fills in quietly. Sarah nods, eyes on her work. "Escalated over 2 years. The pregnancy was unplanned. When the test showed positive, I knew I couldn't raise a child in that environment." Her knife pauses. "I left that night. Took nothing that could be traced." The shared confidences shift something between them. Proximity in the small cabin, taking on new dimensions. That evening, when the temperature plummets further and their breath forms clouds even near the fire, they sit closer than usual, the practical need for warmth providing excuse for desired closeness. "The baby's active tonight," Sarah comments, hand pressed to the side of her swollen belly. Michael hesitates, then asks, "May I?" The request surprises her, but after a moment, Sarah nods. Michael places his palm gently against the movement, wonder transforming his weathered face as the baby kicks firmly against his hand. The radio crackles to life under Michael's careful adjustments, static giving way to a distant human voice, the first sound from the outside world they've heard in months. Sarah freezes mid-task, a handful of dried herbs suspended over the pot of stew, her expression caught between wonder and alarm. "Where did that come from?" she asks, voice hushed, as though the radio might hear her. "Found it in that storage box under your bed while looking for more blankets," Michael explains, continuing to fine-tune the dial with patient fingers. "Batteries were dead, but I managed to connect it to that small solar charger in your emergency pack." Sarah's expression tightens at the mention of her private supplies, but curiosity overcomes territorial instinct as the voice becomes clearer. A weather report, professional and impersonal, describing conditions 50 miles east. December 15th, the announcer states, confirming Sarah's careful calendar tracking. Record low temperatures expected to continue through Christmas. They listen in reverent silence, absorbing this connection to a world that feels increasingly distant from their isolated existence. The weather gives way to news, political developments, international tensions, local events, meaningless in their wilderness context, until a specific report captures their complete attention. Maine State Police continue the search for Boston whistleblower Michael Reeves, wanted for questioning in connection with the Brighton construction fraud case. Reeves, who disappeared 3 months ago after making allegations against company executive Victor Alvarez, is believed to be hiding somewhere in the Northeast. Authorities remind citizens that while Reeves is not considered dangerous, any information regarding his whereabouts should be reported immediately. The silence that follows feels weighted with new tension. Sarah's gaze fixes on Michael, who stares at the radio as though it might physically attack him. "Whistleblower," she says finally. "Not fugitive." Michael's laugh holds no humor. "Depends who's telling the story." He turns the dial, seeking another station, but finds only static. "I told you I testified. Didn't mention that Alvarez's lawyers managed to get a warrant for my arrest afterward, claiming I was the one who falsified documents." "Are you?" Sarah asks, directly, one hand moving protectively to her belly in unconscious gesture. "No." His response comes without hesitation, eyes meeting hers steadily. "I'm exactly who I've claimed to be. A carpenter who saw something wrong and tried to make it right." The radio continues its background static as they process this intrusion of outside reality into their carefully constructed sanctuary. Sarah moves first, returning to the stew, adding the herbs with deliberate normalcy. "My due date is in 3 days, she says finally. "I don't have the luxury of caring about who you were out there, only who you are in here." She gestures to encompass their cabin. "And in here, you've been," she searches for the right word, "necessary." The admission costs her visibly. Independence surrendered to practical truth. Michael absorbs it silently, then returns his attention to the radio, finding another station, this one playing music, a woman's voice singing of lost love and winter loneliness. The haunting melody fills their small space, transforming the atmosphere. Sarah finds herself swaying slightly, muscle memory of movement not required in wilderness survival. Michael watches her, expression softening. "May I?" he asks, standing and extending his hand in formal invitation. Sarah hesitates, then accepts with unexpected grace, allowing him to draw her into a slow, careful dance, accommodating her advanced pregnancy with respectful distance. They move together awkwardly at first, then finding rhythm, circling their small domain in a moment of pure human connection. The song ends too soon, returning them to their complicated reality. Sarah steps back first, flustered by the unexpected intimacy. "I felt something," she says abruptly, hands moving to her lower abdomen. "Not contractions, but different. A dropping sensation." Michael's expression shifts instantly to concern. "The baby?" Moving into position, she explains, medical knowledge providing certainty. "It's normal, but it means labor isn't far off." Her voice remains steady, but her eyes reveal momentary fear. The reality of childbirth in this isolated cabin, suddenly immediate. Michael's response is practical rather than panicked. "We should prepare. What do you need arranged?" His calm competence steadies her. Together they transform the cabin, positioning the birthing area near the fire for warmth, arranging clean cloths within easy reach, ensuring water supplies are replenished. Sarah gives clear instructions that Michael follows without question, their shared purpose overriding any lingering distrust. That evening brings a false alarm. Practice contractions strong enough to wake Sarah from sleep, her gasp alerting Michael instantly. He moves to her side, supporting her through the discomfort until it passes. Not yet, she confirms, breathing returning to normal. But soon, Michael remains seated on the edge of her bed, closer than their usual boundaries permit. I'm scared too, he admits quietly. But we've survived everything else this wilderness has thrown at us. His hand finds hers in the darkness. A simple human connection that Sarah doesn't reject. They remain that way until she drifts back to sleep, fingers intertwined, the radio's faint static a reminder of a world that seems increasingly irrelevant to their shared reality. The wedding ring gleams in the firelight as Sarah turns it between her fingers, the small diamond catching amber reflections from the flames. She had kept it hidden in a tiny pocket sewn inside her heaviest winter boot, the last remnant of a life she'd fled, too valuable to discard yet too painful to acknowledge. 6 years, she says quietly, eyes fixed on the ring rather than meeting Michael's gaze. We were married 6 years before I left. The last 2 were. She searches for words adequate to describe the gradual erosion of safety, dignity, personhood. It happened so slowly I didn't see it clearly until I was trapped. Michael sits across from her, whittling another small animal for the baby's collection, his hands steady and sure even as his attention focuses entirely on her words. They've spent the evening making final preparations. Her due date arrived with no labor signs, but the waiting has created an atmosphere of suspended anticipation. David was respected, admired, Sarah continues, the ring rotating continuously between her fingers. Assistant district attorney with political ambitions, his public face was flawless, charming, principled, dedicated to justice. At home, she swallows hard. At home, he was someone else entirely. The smallest things would trigger him. Dinner timing, laundry folding, my tone of voice. The ring stops moving as her hand tightens around it. The worst part was how he'd explain afterward why it was my fault. How I'd provoked him, failed him, embarrassed him. How I needed to try harder. A bitter smile touches her lips. I was a labor and delivery nurse helping new mothers every day, yet I couldn't see the abuse in my own home. Michael's whittling slows, then stops entirely. Manipulation like that is designed to blind you, he offers quietly. It's not a failure of perception. It's their expertise at control. The insight startles Sarah into finally meeting his eyes. That's exactly right. My sister, Michael explains, setting aside his carving. She was with someone similar. Took her 3 years to leave. He hesitates, then adds, and someone like me to help her disappear afterward. This new connection between them settles in the quiet cabin. Sarah continues her story, words coming easier now. When I discovered the pregnancy, something shifted. I could endure his treatment of me, had been conditioned to believe I deserved it somehow, but I couldn't let a child grow up witnessing that, becoming either victim or perpetrator. Her hand moves protectively to her swollen belly. I left that night, used cash I'd been hiding in small amounts for months, traveled by bus, hitchhiking, walking, always north, always away from cities. He's looking for you? Michael asks, though it's barely a question. Sarah nods. David has resources, connections in law enforcement across New England. His public story would be the concerned husband, searching for his pregnant, possibly mentally unstable wife. Her laugh holds no humor. Who would believe otherwise about the respected assistant DA? I would, Michael says simply. The quiet declaration hangs between them, shifting something fundamental in their relationship. Sarah opens her palm, the ring catching firelight once more. I kept it thinking I might need to pawn it someday for supplies. She studies it dispassionately now, but I won't bring anything of that life into my child's future. With sudden decision, she moves to the fire and drops the ring into the heart of the flames, where it disappears among the burning logs. The symbolic severance loosens something within her. Relief visible, in the slight drop of her shoulders, the deeper breath she takes afterward. When she returns to her seat, she sits closer to Michael than before. "Thank you," she says quietly, "for listening, for being here." Michael's hand reaches for hers tentatively, giving her every opportunity to withdraw. She does. Their fingers interlace, calloused skin against calloused skin, strength recognizing strength. "I'm glad I got lost," he admits, voice rough with emotion. "Never thought I'd say that about anything in my life again, but I am." The confession draws Sarah's eyes to his, something unspoken but increasingly undeniable passing between them. Without conscious decision, she leans forward, her free hand rising to touch his bearded cheek. Michael remains perfectly still, allowing her to control this moment entirely. Their first kiss is gentle, questioning, the briefest touch of lips, before Sarah pulls back slightly, searching his eyes. What she finds there brings her forward again, their second kiss deeper, an acknowledgement of feelings developed through shared survival and growing trust. When they part, neither speaks immediately, the moment requiring no verbal confirmation. Sarah simply shifts to sit beside him, her head finding the natural resting place against his shoulder, his arm carefully encircling her. Outside, the winter wind howls against their cabin walls, testing the strength of what they've built together. Inside, they remain by the fire, connected in comfortable silence, the future unknown but no longer faced alone. The badge and ID lie exposed on the table between them, the official shield and credentials identifying Michael Reeves not as the fugitive whistleblower from the radio report, but as Detective Michael Reeves, Massachusetts State Police Special Investigations Unit. The revelation hangs in the air like the smoke from their fire, altering everything yet changing nothing about their physical circumstances. The unexpected knock had come at dusk, 3 sharp raps against their cabin door shattering months of isolation. Sarah had frozen in terror, one hand instinctively covering her heavily pregnant belly, while Michael moved silently to the window, peering through a narrow gap in the coverings. 2 men, he'd whispered. Hunters, from the looks of their gear. The intrusion of strangers forced an immediate decision. Attempt to hide their presence, impossible, with smoke rising visibly from the chimney, or confront the unexpected visitors. Michael had squeezed Sarah's hand reassuringly before unbarring the door, his body purposefully positioned between her and potential threat. The hunters, bearded and trail-worn, had seemed equally surprised to discover the cabin occupied. Didn't expect to find anyone this far out, the taller one had explained, stamping snow from his boots as Michael cautiously invited them inside. Got turned around in yesterday's storm. Saw your smoke. Their presence filled the small cabin, shrinking the space that had comfortably contained 2. Sarah remained by the hearth, wary but hospitable as wilderness etiquette demanded, offering hot tea to the cold, reddened men. Been tracking moose for 3 days, the shorter hunter explained, hands wrapped gratefully around the steaming cup. Weather turned faster than forecast. His gaze moved curiously between Sarah's pregnant form and Michael, unspoken questions evident in his expression. The precarious moment shattered when recognition dawned suddenly in the taller hunter's eyes as he stared at Michael. "Wait a minute. I know you." He straightened, cup forgotten in his hand. "You're Reeves." From the Boston field off, Michael's posture changed subtly, almost imperceptibly, but Sarah caught the shift, something more guarded, more alert in his stance. "You've mistaken me for someone else," he replied evenly. "No mistake, detective," the hunter insisted, turning to his companion. "Frank, it's Reeves. Remember that undercover operation against the construction fraud last year?" His picture was all over the briefing. The cabin's warmth seemed to vanish in an instant, replaced by a cold more penetrating than the winter outside. Sarah's gaze fixed on Michael, who maintained remarkable composure despite the exposure. "Been a while, Curtis," Michael finally acknowledged, dropping the pretense. "Didn't recognize you with the beard." The revelation spiraled through Sarah's consciousness. Detective, undercover, lies, as the hunters relaxed, now treating Michael as a colleague rather than a stranger. Their conversation flowed with insider terminology, shared knowledge of procedures and personnel, confirming beyond doubt Michael's law enforcement identity. "Department's been looking for you," Curtis informed him between bites of the rabbit stew Sarah mechanically served. "After you disappeared during the Alvarez investigation, some thought you'd gone rogue, others figured you were dead." "Had to go deep," Michael responded vaguely, eyes occasionally flickering to Sarah, registering her stunned silence, her protective distance. The hunters seemed to accept his reticence, professional courtesy extending to unasked questions. Their conversation shifted to safer topics: the hunting expedition, weather conditions, the impressive construction of the cabin. Throughout the evening, Sarah participated minimally, mind racing behind a carefully composed expression. "You folks know about that missing pregnant woman from down south?" Frank asked casually over their meal. "Been all over the police bulletins. Prosecutor's wife. Disappeared back in summer." Sarah's hand froze momentarily in the act of stirring the stew. Michael's response came smoothly, redirecting attention. "We don't get much news out here. By choice." He gestured around the isolated cabin. "That's rather the point." The hunters nodded in understanding, conversation moving to other topics. As the evening progressed, practical arrangements were made. The visitors would sleep near the fire, departing at first light. Sarah prepared bedding mechanically, mind still processing the revelation about Michael's true identity. Later, as the hunters snored softly by the hearth, Sarah and Michael lay awake in tense silence at opposite sides of the cabin. When she finally turned to face him in the darkness, her whispered question held months of accumulated trust, now balanced against devastating doubt. "Who are you really?" Michael's response came equally quiet, aware of the sleeping men nearby. "We need to talk, but not here, not now. Were you looking for me all along?" The question trembled between fear and betrayal. Michael's silhouette shifted in the darkness. "Sarah, I swear to you." The explanation remained unfinished as one of the hunters stirred, turning in his sleep, their conversation suspended. Sarah lay awake until dawn, one hand protectively curved around her belly, eyes fixed on the shadow of the man she'd begun to trust, perhaps to love, wondering how much of their shared reality had been fabricated. Morning brought forced normalcy, breakfast prepared, supplies shared, directions provided. Sarah watched in silence as Michael deliberately misdirected the hunters, pointing them southeast, rather than true south, toward civilization. The official case file lies open on the table, pages spread between them like a barrier. Court documents, surveillance photographs, investigation reports, the physical evidence of Michael's true purpose in the wilderness. Sarah stands across from him, one hand braced against the wall for support, the other protectively covering her belly as she absorbs each devastating revelation. "You were sent to find me," she states, voice hollow with betrayal. "By him." The hunters have been gone barely an hour, their departure releasing the tension that had suppressed confrontation. Now, in their wake, everything lies exposed. Truth more painful than the harshest winter storm. "Not exactly," Michael responds, fingers resting on a document bearing the Massachusetts State Police letterhead. "I was investigating David long before you disappeared." Sarah's disbelieving laugh holds no humor. "So finding me in these woods, pure coincidence?" "No." Michael meets her gaze directly. "I was looking for you, but not for the reasons you think." The file between them tells a complex story, an investigation into corruption reaching beyond the construction case that served as Michael's cover story. David Matthews, assistant district attorney, connected through a web of financial transactions, selective prosecutions, buried evidence. "Your husband has been under investigation for 3 years, Michael explains, turning one of the documents toward her. "We identified him as part of a network protecting certain criminal enterprises in exchange for financial consideration. But he was careful. Nothing direct, nothing provable." Sarah stares at the document, her husband's name highlighted among others, connections mapped in official analysis. "You used me to get to him," she concludes, the pain of this second betrayal evident in her voice. Initially, yes, Michael admits, refusing to soften the truth. When you disappeared, David filed reports claiming mental instability, temporary psychosis related to pregnancy, but our surveillance already showed evidence of domestic abuse. Your disappearance offered a potential break in the case. Sarah's hand tightens protectively over her unborn child. So you tracked me here. It took months, Michael confirms. By the time I located this general area, winter was setting in. The plan was reconnaissance only, confirm your location, then bring in a proper team in spring. His expression softens slightly. Then my compass failed, the storm hit, and you found yourself dependent on the very person you were hunting. Sarah finishes, bitter irony evident in her tone. Michael rises slowly, careful to maintain distance, respecting her anger. Something changed during these months, Sarah. I saw who you really are. Your strength, your integrity. I began documenting everything. David's abuse, his attempts to control the investigation into your disappearance, his manipulation of law enforcement resources. He indicates another section of the file, his own handwritten notes, detailed observations, dates and times of Sarah's descriptions of abuse. This isn't about using you anymore. It's about protecting you and your child. Sarah's defensive posture doesn't soften. Why should I believe anything you say now? Before Michael can respond, she gasps suddenly, hand moving from her belly to brace against the table, face contorting in unmistakable pain. For a moment, he believes it's emotional response to his revelations, until understanding dawns. The baby. Sarah nods tightly, breathing controlled and deliberate. First real contraction, not Braxton Hicks. The personal crisis instantly supersedes their conflict, medical reality demanding priority over emotional wounds. Sarah straightens as the contraction passes, medical knowledge asserting itself despite her distress. Early stages, she assesses clinically, could be hours before anything significant. Michael moves toward their prepared birthing area, only to be stopped by Sarah's sharp command. Don't, just don't. The rejection is absolute. I don't know who you are anymore. I'm the same person who's been here with you for months, Michael responds quietly. The only thing that's changed is what you know about my past. Everything has changed, Sarah contradicts. Another contraction beginning, her breath catching. This one comes sooner than expected, her medical experience registering the significance, despite emotional turmoil. This isn't normal timing. Concern overrides Michael's defensive posture. What can I do? Nothing. Sarah moves carefully toward her bed, supporting herself against furniture. I need to lie down, assess what's happening. Outside, snow begins falling again, heavy flakes visible through the window coverings. The radio on the shelf crackles with static. Then a fragmented voice, weather warning, severe storm. Travelers advised to seek immediate shelter. Their isolation, once protection, now feels ominously absolute. Sarah lies on her bed, eyes closed, focusing inward on her body's signals. When she opens them, Michael stands at respectful distance, conflict evident in his expression. I have a choice to make, she acknowledges, voice steadier than expected. Trust you or face this alone. Neither option feels safe anymore. I won't leave you, Michael promises. Whatever you decide about us afterward. Another contraction grips her, stronger than the previous, pulling a genuine cry of pain. As it subsides, Sarah makes her decision. Pragmatic survival overriding emotional wounds. The baby won't wait for my trust issues to resolve, she concedes. I need your help, but understand this. Helping me doesn't erase your lies. Michael nods. Accepting these terms. I understand. The medical kit, Sarah directs. Professional demeanor asserting control over her personal crisis. And fresh water. This is happening faster than normal. As Michael moves to comply, a sound penetrates their awareness. Engines, distant but approaching through the forest. Human intrusion more significant than lost hunters. Sarah's eyes meet Michael's. shared understanding, requiring no words. Someone else has found them. The emergency birth kit sits open beside Sarah's bed, its carefully prepared contents arranged in precise order. Sterilized scissors for the umbilical cord, clean cloths stacked and ready, herbal preparations for pain and bleeding, the small suture kit taken from her original medical supplies. Michael checks each item against the list Sarah dictated between contractions, his movements efficient despite the tension evident in his posture. Contractions are 4 minutes apart, Sarah reports, voice clinical though pain shadows her eyes. Moving faster than typical first labor. The stress probably triggered it. Outside, the blizzard has intensified, snow driving horizontally past their windows, wind howling around the cabin's corners. The sound of engines heard earlier has disappeared, perhaps imagined, perhaps deterred by the worsening storm. Either way, immediate threat seems to have receded, leaving only the more pressing crisis of Sarah's accelerating labor. "I need to check the baby's position," she directs, medical training asserting control over both physical pain and emotional turmoil. "Help me sit up." Michael supports her carefully, their recent conflict temporarily suspended by necessity. His hands, strong and steady through months of wilderness survival, now gentle as they help position her against the wall. "I need you to listen carefully," Sarah says, once settled, breath catching as another contraction builds. First labors usually last 12 to 16 hours. This is progressing much faster. It could mean complications. Michael's expression reveals concern beneath his composed exterior. What kind of complications? Possible breech presentation, potential hemorrhage, cord issues. Sarah recites the risks with professional detachment, though her hand trembles slightly against the rough blanket. "I'll guide you through each step, but you need to be prepared. There may be a point where I can't direct anymore." The stark reality of their situation settles between them, miles from medical assistance, caught in a blizzard, with only their combined knowledge and limited supplies to manage a potentially dangerous birth. Michael absorbs this with the same steady resolve that has characterized his approach to every wilderness challenge. "Tell me exactly what to do," he says simply. "I won't let you down." Sarah's response is prevented by another contraction, stronger than previous ones, forcing her to focus entirely on breathing through the pain. When it subsides, she continues her instructions with renewed urgency. "When the time comes, I'll need to push with contraction. You'll need to support the baby's head as it emerges, check for the umbilical cord around the neck, guide the shoulders out one at a time." The clinical description contrasts sharply with the intimate reality these actions will require. Boundaries of privacy necessarily abandoned. Outside, the blizzard intensifies further, snow piling against the north wall of the cabin, temperature dropping precipitously as night approaches. Michael tends the fire with careful attention, building it higher than usual to combat the exceptional cold, ensuring the birthing area remains sufficiently warm. The radio on the shelf crackles unexpectedly to life. Reception briefly improved by some atmospheric anomaly. Fragments of transmission cut through static. Search parties, northern Piscataqui Keys. County, missing persons of interest. Sarah and Michael exchange glances. Sarah and Michael exchange glances. Sarah and Michael exchange glances. Share understanding requiring no words. Someone is searching, and close enough for radio signals to reach them despite the storm. The question of who, law enforcement seeking Michael, David's connections, hunting Sarah, or unrelated search parties, remains unanswerable. "If they find us," Sarah begins, interrupted by another powerful contraction that leaves her gasping. "They won't," Michael assures her once she recovers. "Not in this storm. We have time." The confidence in his voice provides momentary comfort, though both recognize the precariousness of their situation. Sarah gestures toward Michael's case file, still open on the table. "If something happens to me," she says, maternal instinct overriding personal pride, "use that to protect my baby from him." Michael moves to her side, kneeling to meet her eyes directly. "Nothing will happen to you, but yes, I promise. Your child will be protected whatever comes." The vow, simple yet profound, bridges some of the distance created by his revealed deception. Sarah nods acknowledgement, then gasps as her waters break suddenly, soaking the bedding beneath her. It's accelerating, she manages, medical knowledge providing context for her body's signals. Transition phase already. Michael moves with practiced efficiency, changing wet bedding while supporting Sarah, positioning clean cloths beneath her. The intimate care, once unthinkable between strangers, now flows naturally after months of shared survival. Write a letter, Sarah requests suddenly during a brief respite between contractions, to my child, in case. She doesn't complete the thought. Mortality's shadow passing unspoken between them. Michael retrieves her journal and pencil without question. Sarah dictates between increasingly powerful contractions, words flowing directly from mother's heart to unknown child. Love, hopes, wisdom distilled from her journey. Michael records faithfully, his own hand steady even as emotion threatens his composure. Letter completed. Sarah folds it carefully, pressing it into Michael's hand. Keep this safe. A particularly powerful contraction interrupts their exchange, Sarah's cry of pain echoing in the small cabin. As it subsides, she speaks with new urgency. It's time. The baby's coming now. Michael positions himself as instructed, all personal boundaries necessarily abandoned in service to this most primal human event. His face reveals momentary uncertainty, quickly masked by determined focus. I can see the head, he reports, voice steady despite the enormity of the moment. Dark hair. Outside, barely perceptible beneath the storm's fury, comes a sound that freezes Michael's blood. The mechanical rumble of snowmobiles, stopping near their cabin. Human voices call through the howling wind, words indistinguishable but intention clear. They've been found. The hunting rifle stands propped beside the cabin door, loaded and ready, their only defense against the approaching threat. Michael moves with controlled urgency between Sarah's bedside and the window, dividing his attention between the laboring woman and the shadowy figures now visible through the swirling snow. 3 men, he reports in hushed tones, returning to support Sarah through another powerful contraction. Heavy winter gear, armed. Not law enforcement, no uniforms or standard approach pattern. Sarah's face, pale with exertion, registers both pain and fear. David, she gasps, as the contraction subsides. He would send people who couldn't be traced back to him. The cabin door shudders suddenly under heavy impact. Not a knock, but an attempt to force entry. Michael moves instantly to the rifle, positioning himself between the door and Sarah, whose labor has progressed beyond the point where movement is possible. State police, Michael calls out, voice carrying the unmistakable authority of his training. Identify yourselves. Momentary silence follows his command, broken by a gruff voice outside. We're here for Sarah Matthews. Her husband is concerned about her mental state. Sarah's bitter laugh transforms into another cry as the strongest contraction yet grips her body. The baby's coming, she manages between labored breaths. Heads crowning. Can't stop now. Michael faces an impossible division, the imminent birth requiring his assistance, while unknown men attempt to breach their sanctuary. He makes his choice in an instant, engaging the rifle's safety and propping it within reach before returning to Sarah's side. Push with the next contraction, he instructs calmly, hands positioned to support the emerging infant. These men can wait. The door shudders again under renewed assault. Wood splintering around the simple lock. Michael ignores the imminent breach, focus entirely on the miracle unfolding before him as Sarah bears down with primal strength, her body knowing what to do despite the chaos surrounding them. That's it, he encourages, as the baby's head emerges fully into his waiting hands. One more push for the shoulders. The door finally gives way, crashing inward as 3 men enter, snow swirling around their bulky forms. The leader raises his weapon, only to freeze at the unexpected tableau before him, a woman in the final stage of childbirth, a man kneeling before her in assistance, the intimate moment incongruously juxtaposed against their violent intrusion. Don't move, the leader orders, recovering quickly, weapon trained on Michael's back. Finish delivering that baby, then you're both coming with us. Michael doesn't acknowledge the command, attention fixed entirely on supporting Sarah through her final push. The baby slides into his waiting hands, slippery and perfect, a cry of new life filling the cabin as Michael clears the tiny airway with practiced movements, learned from Sarah's careful instruction. "Girl," he announces, voice thick with emotion, as he places the newborn on Sarah's chest. "She's perfect." The armed men shift uncomfortably, mission parameters clearly unprepared for the reality of childbirth. Their leader gestures impatiently with his weapon, touching. "Now wrap this up. We have orders to bring them both back immediately." Michael rises slowly, positioning himself between the armed men and the new mother and child. "Federal agent," he states calmly, "you're interfering with an ongoing investigation." The claim creates momentary confusion, exactly as intended. In that hesitation, Michael reaches for the concealed recording device he'd activated when the engines were first heard, standard procedure from his law enforcement training, habit not abandoned, despite months in wilderness isolation. "I've been documenting everything," he informs them. "Device visible now, including this armed intrusion during childbirth. Your connection to ADA Matthews is already established in an active federal investigation." The leader's expression hardens. "You're bluffing. Matthews said you were just some carpenter who seduced his unstable wife." "Check my credentials," Michael suggests, nodding toward his case file on the table. "Massachusetts State Police, Special Investigations. Whatever he's paying you won't cover the federal charges you're facing right now." The uncertainty among the men is palpable, their mission suddenly complicated by potential legal consequences. Behind Michael, Sarah works with quiet determination, cutting and tying the umbilical cord herself, wrapping her newborn daughter securely against the cabin's growing chill as the open door admits gusts of snow and freezing air. "We were told to retrieve a mentally unstable woman," the second man argues, clearly reconsidering their position. "Nothing about police or federal investigations. You were lied to," Michael confirms. "And now you're being recorded threatening an officer and a woman who just gave birth." The standoff stretches, tension building as the men evaluate their deteriorating situation. Sarah's voice breaks the silence, calm despite her exhaustion. "My husband is the one facing charges," she informs them, cradling her newborn protectively. "Domestic abuse, corruption, misuse of office. Whatever he promised you isn't worth what you'll face if you continue." The leader's weapon lowers slightly, doubt evident. This moment of uncertainty shatters as the radio on the shelf suddenly blares to life, reception cleared by the passing storm front. "All units be advised," comes the official transmission. "State Police helicopter inbound to coordinates 45.89 north, 69.42 west. ETA 20 minutes, weather permitting. Secure the scene." The coordinates within a mile of their cabin confirm what Michael had suspected. The hunters weren't simply lost. They had recognized him and reported his location, setting in motion both legitimate law enforcement response and David's desperate attempt to reach Sarah first. The newborn's first blanket, stained with the blood of birth, wrapped securely around the tiny life now cradled against Sarah's chest. Through the cabin's shattered doorway, snowflakes drift in, melting against the warm bundle. Sarah's focus remains entirely on her daughter's perfect face, despite the dangerous standoff continuing mere feet away. "Lower your weapons," Michael instructs the intruders, his voice steady and authoritative. "State Police will be here in minutes. Your only option now is cooperation." The men exchange uncertain glances, their mission unraveling with each passing moment. Their hesitation breaks as a new figure appears in the doorway, a man whose expensive winter gear contrasts sharply with the hired muscle before him. "David," Sarah whispers, instinctively drawing her newborn closer. Assistant District Attorney David Matthews steps into the cabin, snow dusting his shoulders, his handsome features composed into an expression of concerned authority that Sarah recognizes all too well, the public face that hides his private nature. "Sarah," he acknowledges, gaze moving clinically over her exhausted form before settling on the infant. I see I'm just in time for the birth of my child. Michael positions himself more firmly between David and the new mother. She's not going anywhere with you, Matthews. Especially not now. David's smile doesn't reach his cold eyes. Detective Reeves, you've overstepped your jurisdiction rather dramatically. He addresses his hired men without breaking eye contact with Michael. Wait outside. This is a family matter now. The men comply without question, filing out into the storm, leaving the four of them, Sarah, her newborn Michael, and David, alone in the cabin that had been sanctuary until moments ago. You have no legal right to be here, Michael states, recording device still active in his hand. And I have months of evidence documenting your abuse, corruption, and misuse of law enforcement resources. David's expression doesn't falter. Evidence gathered while you were suspended from duty, operating without authorization, while developing an inappropriate relationship with a mentally unstable pregnant woman who fled proper medical care. His voice carries absolute certainty. No judge will admit it. Sarah's voice rises from the bed, stronger than expected after childbirth. I'm not mentally unstable. I was escaping an abusive husband. A claim with no evidence beyond your word, David counters smoothly, against a respected prosecutor with an impeccable public record. He steps closer, confidence evident in every movement. Let's be practical about this. You've just given birth in primitive conditions. You need medical attention. Our child needs proper care. Come back willingly and I'm prepared to be understanding about this episode. The familiar pattern of manipulation, threat wrapped in reasonable concern, control disguised as care, triggers something in Sarah beyond exhaustion and pain. She shifts her newborn to one arm, reaching with her free hand for Michael's case file on the nearby table. Evidence like this, she challenges, extracting a USB drive hidden within the file's binding. Everything Michael recorded is backed up, along with my own documentation from 2 years of systematic abuse, already sent to multiple sources. David's composure slips momentarily, genuine surprise replacing calculated control. You're bluffing. The Special Investigations Unit has been building a case against you for 3 years, Michael informs him, professional satisfaction evident in his tone. Financial transactions with Alvarez, evidence tampering in the Brighton construction case, witness intimidation. Your corruption investigation was already underway before Sarah ever left you. The revelation lands like a physical blow. David's carefully constructed facade cracking visibly. His gaze hardens as he reaches inside his expensive coat, extracting a small pistol that had escaped the notice of his hired muscle. Then I'll need to ensure those allegations never reach a courtroom, he states coldly, weapon trained on Mike. A tragic situation. Deranged detective becomes obsessed with case subject, forces her into wilderness isolation. Tragedy ensues during childbirth. I arrived too late to save my wife, but at least I can raise our child. The calculated scenario chills Sarah more than the winter air flowing through the broken door. The baby stirs against her chest, small sounds of discomfort breaking the tension. David, Sarah says quietly, drawing his attention. Look at your daughter. Whether from calculation or genuine paternal instinct, David's gaze shifts momentarily to the newborn. In that split second of distraction, Michael moves with the trained precision of his law enforcement background, disarming David in a single fluid motion that ends with the prosecutor pinned against the cabin wall, weapon safely kicked aside. David Matthews, you're under arrest, Michael begins formally, securing the man's wrists with cord from their supply. The confrontation freezes as the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors becomes audible over the storm's diminishing fury, followed by the crunch of additional snowmobiles approaching the cabin. Flashlight beams cut through the doorway, accompanied by authoritative voices identifying state police special tactics. In here, Michael calls out, maintaining his hold on David. Officer needs assistance. The cabin fills suddenly with uniformed officers, weapons drawn, assessing the extraordinary scene, the new mother and infant on the blood-stained bed. The detective, restraining a well-known prosecutor. The humble cabin in the wilderness transformed into a nexus of law enforcement activity. Detective Reeves, the tactical team leader, lowers his weapon slightly. Recognition evident. HQ said, "You might be here, but..." His voice trails off as he takes in the full situation. "This man is under arrest," Michael states officially, handing the subdued David to the officers. Charges include corruption, witness tampering, abuse, and just now, attempted murder. As David is secured by the tactical team, Michael returns immediately to Sarah's side, professional demeanor softening as he kneels beside the bed, gently adjusting the blanket around the newborn. "Are you both okay?" he asks quietly, the simple question containing months of shared struggle, revelation, and unexpected connection. Sarah looks from her daughter's face to his, exhaustion and triumph mingling in her expression. "We are now..." The deed to the land rests in Sarah's hands, official state seal prominent on the document that makes the wilderness cabin and surrounding 5 acres legally hers. Spring sunlight streams through the new glass windows, illuminating the much-improved interior where her daughter sleeps peacefully in the handcrafted cradle. "It's done," she says, still somewhat disbelieving despite the official paperwork. "They really gave it to me." Michael looks up from the garden plot he's measuring outside the open door. State had no claim on unregistered land this remote. Once the survey confirmed it wasn't part of protected wilderness, filing homestead rights was straightforward. 4 months have passed since the dramatic night of birth and confrontation. Winter has released its grip on the Maine wilderness, snow retreating to reveal tender green shoots pushing through dark soil. The cabin bears little resemblance to the hastily constructed shelter of Sarah's desperate pregnancy, now expanded with a proper addition, smoke rising from a well-built chimney, windows that open to spring breezes. Sarah moves to the doorway, daughter cradled against her shoulder, watching Michael mark the garden boundaries with careful precision. Their relationship has evolved through extraordinary circumstances, from distrust to dependency to something neither rushes to define. "Any news about the case?" she asks, referring to the ongoing proceedings against David that have occupied much of the outside world's attention. Michael straightens, driving another stake into the softening ground. Prosecution offered a plea deal. He rejected it. Still thinks he can beat the charges. He shakes his head slightly. Pride comes before the fall. Sarah's testimony, delivered via video deposition to spare her direct contact with her husband, provided crucial evidence in the expanding corruption case. David remains in custody, bail denied due to flight risk, and the seriousness of charges that now include attempted murder along with the original corruption allegations. "He'll never stop believing he was entitled to control me," Sarah observes, no longer afraid to speak this truth. "Some men can't accept that women aren't possessions." The baby stirs against her shoulder, small sounds of waking drawing Sarah's immediate attention. At 3 months old, Emma Catherine Matthews displays her mother's determined spirit and watchful eyes, already tracking movements around the cabin with focused curiosity. "She's going to be as strong as her mother," Michael comments, coming to stand beside them, garden plans temporarily abandoned. Their domestic arrangement remains unconventional. Michael has built his own small cabin 50 yards away, respecting Sarah's need for independence while remaining close enough for practical assistance and protection. Their healing from shared trauma progresses at its own careful pace, neither pushing for definitions or commitments. The garden needs to be bigger, Sarah decides, professional nurse's understanding of nutrition informing her assessment. Emma will need fresh vegetables when she starts solids in a few months. Michael smiles at the long-term planning, evidence of Sarah's commitment to this place they've defended together. "I'll expand it east toward the stream. Better sunlight there anyway." Their conversation pauses as Emma becomes fully awake, demanding attention with increasing insistence. Sarah soothes her with practiced movements, the initial awkwardness of new motherhood transformed into confident care. "Sometimes I still can't believe we survived that winter," Sarah admits, gazing around at their transformed surroundings, the cabin no longer a desperate shelter, but a genuine home. "You would have made it without me." Michael responds with certainty. You're the strongest person I've ever known. The simple acknowledgement touches something deep within Sarah, not merely pride in survival, but recognition of the profound journey from victim to self-sovereign woman, capable of building a life entirely on her terms. But I'm glad I didn't have to, she admits quietly, the statement representing significant progress in her ability to acknowledge healthy interdependence. Their moment is interrupted by the distant sound of a vehicle navigating the improved trail to their clearing, the weekly supply delivery from the nearest town, part of their cautious reintegration with the outside world. The isolation that once protected them has softened into selective connection, their wilderness haven maintained while allowing necessary contact. As the delivery truck appears at the clearing's edge, Sarah hands Emma to Michael, their exchange comfortable with practiced familiarity. I'll sign for everything, she offers, moving toward the approaching vehicle. Michael accepts the baby with natural ease, his initial uncertainty with the newborn long since replaced by confident care. We'll start marking the garden rows, he informs Emma seriously, as though the infant might offer agricultural insights. Sarah pauses, watching them together. This man who entered her life as stranger, became reluctant Eli, revealed himself as both deceiver and protector, and now stands as something yet undefined, but increasingly essential. The delivery driver arrives with supplies, friendly conversation, connection to the wider world. Sarah engages with confident ease, no longer the desperate fugitive, but a woman firmly rooted in her chosen place. When the transaction concludes and the driver departs, she returns to find Michael kneeling in the soft earth, Emma secured against his chest in a fabric carrier, showing her the seedlings that will become their summer garden. Welcome home, he says simply, not to the returning Sarah but to the awakening land around them, to the life they've defended, to the future unfolding before them, uncertain but faced together.